can change that.
Hey, oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Mackenzie Weaver. I am a 7th grade social studies teacher. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I moved here right after graduation from BGSU in 2019. I just worked on and completed my master's in classroom technology, which happened to come at the most perfect time ever. I did not expect when I chose to get my master's in classroom technology that there would be a global pandemic and I would be teaching 100% virtually for the next year. But those skills that I learned from my master's has just equipped me so well for this year. It's been unimaginable how amazing it has been. I did put my teacher Twitter on here if you would like to follow it. I do a lot more reading than actually posting. I read through other people that I follow, and also my email here as well. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a picture of myself as well as my team of teachers. We are a group all teaching 100% virtually this year. And our main focus beyond, of course, teaching the content has been building relationships with our students. And I wanted to include this picture in my introduction of myself just so you kind of get a glimpse as to who I am as an educator. I will do anything for my students. I am one of those teachers where people veteran teachers will tell me last year when it was my first year teaching, you need to go home, stop working. And so this is a picture of our team this year. We actually, every single Friday, we pick a student of the week and we go to that student's house and present them with a certificate and some goodies for some different surrounding businesses so that they can go out and enjoy themselves. And we really use it as an opportunity to connect with them and show them that there are real people behind the screen. And it's also a great opportunity for us to see our students in person as well and see the students behind the screen. I've had a few surprises in terms of height when we knock on the door and all of a sudden massive children walk out and I'm like, oh wow, you're in 7th grade and you're 6 feet tall. That's insane. But it's been a great opportunity. So I just wanted to share that with everyone as well before I got started. So here is a short video from Trevor Muir called School is Not Canceled. He is one of the most inspiring YouTubers about education that I have ever seen. As you can see down here in the bottom, he has so many videos on YouTube I would highly recommend at any time if you have extra time in our very busy schedules. He is amazing. So I wanted to show you this short clip before we got started as well.
The headlines say that school has been canceled. They're shut down until this crisis has been dismantled. Social distance measures have been dropped like an anvil. And since you can't guarantee every kid has a laptop, paper, and pencil, classrooms are empty, parents are extra busy, and our students are going crazy because school has been canceled. Well, except for the one where that teacher dresses up and reads books to his 3rd graders. Well, and those that are sending personalized letters to their students in weekly mailers. And the ones making signs and celebrating high school seniors, making sure that they can finish their education and don't feel like failures. Well, and then there's those schools that are providing food for every kid in their area. Teachers and administrators bringing stability in all of this hysteria, like holding Zoom meetings and greeting every kid by name before they share, whose primary mission right now is to make sure every kid knows that they care, who realize that this type of school isn't the same that it was before. It's not defined by learning content and getting a high score, but the motivation is creativity and finding new ways to engage students more, like hands-on activities and encouraging them to get outside more. It's still caring for students who no longer walk through the door, like the teachers who are delivering students work from the trunk of their cars and are making time for virtual parent meetings from afar. Or how about the music teachers giving their students lessons online, having their students combine their music together on Skype, or those math teachers who are drawing problems on sidewalks in chalk for their students to answer when they go out for a walk. Or the science teacher who's using school's 3D printers to protect law enforcement when they cough. Or my daughter's preschool teacher who called my little girl this morning just to talk. Or all those teachers who continue to be a rock for their students. Don't tell me that school has been canceled. School is not a building or a location. It's a collection of people who are committed to meaningful relations. And that's something that doesn't just dissipate when there's a virus that spreads across nations. Of course, it looks different and there's plenty of resistance, but not getting together physically doesn't mean relational distance. We are being reminded right now of an educator's persistence and the vital role that they play in our society's existence. And they keep striving to provide our children with assistance. And now, when this is all over, we probably won't miss this. But right now, we focus on what's most important. So let's be loud and clear in case the media does not report it. School is not canceled.
Sorry. I don't know about you, but that video gives me chills every single time. I've watched it probably like close to 5 times now. And not only does it give me chills, but it also kind of remotivates me every time I watch it. Every time I go into a little bit of a slump thinking my students don't care anymore, or they're not motivated, I will rewatch that video and just remember that as long as we care and as long as I care about the students, everything's going to be all right. They're going to continue learning. Their relationships are going to continue. And I think he has so many important points in that video that we all need to hear sometimes. So this goes all the way back to the very beginning of the pandemic. For me, it started on March 16th last year when I got a call that we were not going back to school the next day. I had my plans ready, everything was ready to go, and they said school's canceled. And I had a lot of misconceptions about what distance learning was going to be and how I was going to present information to my students. But at first, I just wanted to talk to you all about what I did wrong and how I fixed it. And for me, this really goes back to a growth mindset and always being willing to learn and grow and change as an educator. So in the very beginning, I thought that the students would and could pick up from where we left off, whether that was last March when we all of a sudden we were starting online, or even this fall where I was picking up with historical learning from where I thought they had left off in 6th grade. But I realized that having the same norms and expectations that I had in a face-to-face classroom in virtual learning, the students became discouraged almost immediately. And I could see it in their faces. I could feel it in the way that they were interacting with me. I really had this perception that I would still have the good kids that would always stick around and always be there for me. And I quickly realized that I had to basically start from scratch with building rapport. Kids that I had had conversations with that stopped by my classroom every single day after school, I hadn't heard from in weeks. And I thought, like, well, what's going on? Like, I miss them. Don't they miss me? Like, don't they want to talk to me? And they were just, I can only imagine what 12-year-olds' minds were doing over the summer and in the fall of thinking, what does this mean for me as a learner? And I had to think about what this meant for me as a teacher. I also realized that I was giving way too much information way too fast. And due to this being new for both me and the students, I learned that I really had to take it slow. Thankfully, in South Carolina, I don't 100% know about Ohio, but in South Carolina, all of our standardized tests were canceled last year. And I think at this point, they are still canceled for the spring as well. So although we don't want to say like, oh, well, we can take it slow because we don't have the standardized tests, I definitely felt that pressure removed from myself and felt like, okay, if they're not getting this, I can go a little bit deeper. I can spend a little bit extra time on this topic because I have the ability to do so. I don't have 2 weeks taken up by standardized tests in the spring. So I definitely was able to grow from what happened in the spring and even what happened in the beginning of the school year in August. So I had been reading through articles. I had just started my master's and I was trying to figure out all these different ways to engage students online. And I came up with basically 6 easy remedies to basic distance learning problems. And I'm going to go through each of those with you now. So the first one is keeping it simple. And in my previous session on lesson study, Dr. Nancy Patterson had brought this up as well, just making sure that you're keeping it simple. There's no reason to be super overcomplicated online. Again, this is new for many of us. And sorry, I can see you all in the corner, so I couldn't see my words. Okay. The goal of distance learning and e-learning should be to educate. And if it doesn't educate the students, if they're not getting something out of it, why are you wasting your time on it in a virtual environment, right? So ask yourself, what will your learners actually be able to do after your course today? I'm so big on my learning standard or my course objective for the day always being action-based, of like, what are they actually able to do? Instead of just saying like, what can they memorize in social studies? Do they know the dates? Like, what are they able to actually do? And to me, everything else, regardless of how cool it might be, I might see stuff on Facebook of teachers doing all these crazy cool things. I found that it just like has not been necessary for distance learning. And then finally, in terms of keeping it simple, for me, I found that it is incredibly important to stay consistent. It's easy when you're with your kids in person to switch something up all of a sudden right before class starts. It's easy to say, you know what, this website isn't working, so let's try a different one. And it's easy to throw all those different things together when they're right there in front of you and you can hands-on go over their shoulder and help them. But I found that switching things up in a virtual environment, the kids don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden they're very, very thrown off. So I actually set up kind of a syllabus for my students at the very beginning. And I said, like, Mondays, this is what we're doing for the entire school year. Tuesdays, this is what we're doing for the entire school year. They know if they miss a Tuesday, they need to get on Quizlet. They need to go over their vocabulary because we spent an entire day working on vocabulary and implementing that into our language. They know that if they were absent on a Thursday or Friday, they probably missed some type of assessment. So whether it be just like a simple quiz or whether it was like the beginning of a larger project, that's what we always are doing at the end of the week. They also know that if they missed a Monday, they probably missed out on notes, which is going to be very, very important. So that has been something that I have kept consistent throughout the entire school year. And I've asked them a few times, like, is this getting boring? And they're like, no, it's so nice to know that we have the same thing going on every single day of every single week, and they know what to expect at all times. I do have some resources on the left-hand side that I use for keeping it simple. I don't know, everyone's school district is different. My school district is a Microsoft district, so we use Microsoft Teams for everything. So we have Teams meetings, we use, I guess it's not called forms, but we have all different things through Microsoft. We're not a Google district, but I know that there's Google Hangouts and Zoom that other districts are using as well. And then for me, it was really important to still have those synchronous discussions with my students. So I know that you can have discussion boards through Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams, but my biggest implementation for discussion boards has actually been Flipgrid. And I know a lot of people talk about Flipgrid, and I don't know how many people have heard about it in PDs, and then they're like, oh, that sounds cool, but like, I'm not gonna use it, and they don't actually ever try it. So what I wanted to do was I first set up a little introduction to Flipgrid here, just to show like how straightforward and easy it is. So your grid is your class. So I have 4 different grids, and I just name them like first period, second period, sixth period, and seventh period. And then each week I add a new topic, whether it's the French Revolution, Industrial Revolution, whatever we're learning that week. And then the students are able to record their faces and record their ideas about whatever the question of that week is. And then they can also respond to each other. And we spent a few weeks at the beginning of the year going over how to disagree with each other respectfully, how to go about recording ourselves. And I do want to remind you before I show you the next slide that these are 7th graders, and they are not amazing at just sitting behind the camera and just talking. So I had asked them a question about the French Revolution and between the 3 estates, who they thought should be in charge and why. And I edited together a video of a few of my students' responses. And it's really, really interesting to watch because I chose one where he actually decided that he wanted the king to continue to be in charge. And I chose this because the 3 responses to his video all disagreed. And I wanted to show you how the 7th graders could really work together to disagree respectfully and give evidence for why. So again, please remember that these are 7th graders. So there's a lot of ums and likes and rocking in the chairs, but that's normal for me. So hopefully you enjoy this as well.
In my opinion, I think the king should rule over France because if the if the nobles and the rich people ruled over, then it would be very, corrupt, and people would just want to make money. And if the religious people, the popes and stuff like that, would run France, then I think would be corrupt too, because they would just like push their ideologies on every single person, and it will make France horrible. And then I don't think the common people should be it either, because not all of them are fit to be king, or not all of them are fit to lead a whole country. So I don't think that should happen. But the king, people can elect the king, and or come from a family that is very good, and that's actually a good possibility for him to be king. And it's much lower for the king to be bad than any other things to be.
Hey Tyler, I saw your video and I disagree. I agree about the first two estates. No, they should not rule, but the third estate should rule because there's so many and all of them deserve a chance to get their word out. And the king, if he says something, it's gonna happen. But with the people, everybody gets a balanced say on things. And yeah.
Tyler, you made some good points about productivity if a few people are in the country, but I think that your thing is wrong. I think that multiple people should run the country because if it was the three estates, then there could be then the third estate wouldn't be as poor as they are, and yeah.
And I see your point. I disagree a little bit. If you give it to all the people, even the kings and queens, you could have a balanced out way, because the popes can get money through and pay money, because the commoners would make sure that everyone would pay their taxes, which is the major point I said. And the kings and queens can still have rules going on, but not have enough to overrule, say, the tax rule. So that's just my opinion, but I like the points in yours. I see why, but I still feel like everyone should get the power.
So I just wanted to show you again how I was able to really engage my students in a topic that, for one, is very complicated for 12-year-olds to be able to discuss the estates of the French Revolution and why they were angry about taxes and wanting to revolt against the king. But I also found this specific one to be very interesting because, number one, even after our entire class discussion about how the king was corrupt, he still wanted the king to rule. And I loved the way that those three boys were able to not just say you're wrong, Miss Weaver said this in class. They gave so much evidence for why they still thought that the commoners and everyone should have an equal balance of power. And I really loved how they were able to do that. My notifications were going off. Are there people saying anything in the chat?
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay.
You were thanked for protecting student identity. It was noted that it must have been a challenge, and apparently the last boy's shirt got a little reaction. So.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. Yeah, I used iMovie, and I actually went literally pixel by pixel to cover up their faces. It took me an hour. But it was worth it because I really hope that you were able to see how they were able to have these discussions online. I also really like Flipgrid because sometimes kids get intimidated when there's 35 kids in my class. And so they're not as likely to unmute their mic and actually talk. And I get a lot of silence in my classroom, but on Flipgrid, their personalities come out. I'm able to see their faces consistently, and they do a great job of interacting with each other. So I love Flipgrid. It has been my pride and joy this year, and I go on there all the time to remember why I'm a teacher, because I love to see their interactions and their positivity despite everything that's going on in their lives. So if you haven't tried Flipgrid, just ask them where their favorite place is in Toledo, or ask them what their favorite food is, and you're going to see like the craziest reactions. I could not believe one kid told me he had never been to the beach and lived in Charleston. And let me tell you, he got like 23 comments on his Flipgrid about how they couldn't believe he had never been to the beach because it's only like 10 minutes away. And I love, that was one of our introductory ones at the very beginning. And I love Flipgrid. So my next resource for you and way to eliminate some issues with distance learning is repetition. And we know this in the classroom as teachers, of course, we need to repeat ourselves, but I find online, I am repeating myself way more. And sometimes I get irritated because I feel like I've said things like 100 times, but in the back of my mind, I'm always trying to remember, I don't know what's going on in their background. I don't know what younger children are screaming, who's vacuuming. As you heard in that Flipgrid, you could hear someone was vacuuming in the background. I don't know their distractions. And in all reality, I don't really know how they are as learners, especially at the beginning of the year. So I had to remind myself to constantly be repeating myself in different ways. And throughout the session, I like to ask students just the way that I would in a real classroom. I have the students repeat the instructions back to me. I also post the instructions, and a lot of times at the very bottom of the instructions, I'll say, respond with this specific reaction once you've read the whole thing. So sometimes it'll be a thumbs up, sometimes it'll be a heart, and it's very easy to see the kids that say, oh, everyone's liking this, I'm gonna put a heart, or I'm gonna put a laughing face, but they never really actually read the instructions. So it's a quick check for understanding by posting the instructions and asking the students to respond. So I like that a lot. Some resources that I have used for repetition, as well as some of my colleagues have used for repetition, is Common Lit, Newsela or Newsela, and Newseum ED. And these are all linked. So if you go into my presentation, you can go straight to these websites through here. But I'm going to show you a little bit from Newsela from a social studies perspective. So this is how I use Newsela in the classroom. A lot of our founding documents that we have to go over are at a 12th grade or higher level. And I would imagine not every single one of us teaches 12th grade. And yet we are kind of responsible for teaching these to really, really young kids. And so I decided to pull up the original preamble of the Constitution, as well as putting it down at actually a 3rd grade level to show the difference and what Newsela is able to do. So not only can I translate the Lexile level, which you would need to talk to maybe the ELA person on your team, or maybe just any ELA teacher at your school to see what the general Lexile level is for students in your grade band. But like I said, I have it at a 12th grade and a 3rd grade. And I'm sure you can see from your perspective, just the stark differences that will easily help students understand. And this isn't changing the content of the Constitution at all, but it's changing the ability of the students to read, comprehend, and then be able to engage in the material. Because if I give them this original preamble that says establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, I'm gonna get crickets for like 3 minutes before someone decides to speak up and say, Miss Weaver, we don't know what that means. But for me to change it, even to put it at a 3rd grade level for 7th graders is okay, because I want them to engage with me and answer my questions and talk to each other about the material. So the lower I make it so that they're able to understand, I mean, I'm not going to put it at a 1st or 2nd grade level, but I have some of my students that really struggle, and I don't want them to struggle through this. The point is not for them to, I'm not trying to challenge their reading and so much in social studies. I definitely do with certain like DBQs and things like that. But when we're just discussing a document, I want to be able to actually talk about it. So like this one, it says, set up justice, promise peace, protect the people, keep them healthy, and have liberty for ourselves and our children. And I feel like you can easily see how that conversation will spur so much more engagement than establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, those types of things. So you can also translate it into Spanish if you have ELLs in your classroom. I have one in one of my distance learning classrooms, and that has been a difficult challenge as well. But through News ELA, he can choose to change everything into Spanish so that he can read it and not be so challenged and struggle so much with the material, which is awesome. The next one that I have for you is that I want you to look at what you have, and perhaps maybe it's too long. Our attention spans, even as adults, are short and getting even shorter. with the onset of TikTok and Snapchat and Vine, those are 10-second spans that our kids are seeing information, and then it switches, and then it switches again. So for us to talk for sometimes 60 minutes, they're gone after the first 10. So I definitely try to keep my sessions to about 10 minutes before breaking out into a discussion group or an activity. And then I try to call them back for a different discussion, or maybe I'll present more information and then I let them go again. So I think not only does that give the break for the students, but I don't feel like I'm lecturing to a screen for so long. I don't feel like I'm sitting in silence for so long, because I'm giving them those needed breaks. For me, it was really important to not just say, okay, guys, come back in 10 minutes. It was really integral that I said, come back at 11:52. Like, those, actually saying the number itself was very, very important. And allowing them to legitimately leave the meeting. I think there's a few teachers on my team that struggle with actually letting them leave and come back. But I found that when I give them that specific time of 11:52 or 1:07, like, they're there and I don't have to worry about it. Of course, there's always those few students that I have to like call 7 times before they pop back into the meeting. But for the most part, they're all there at that very specific time. Whereas in the beginning of the year, I had just been saying like, come back in 10 minutes or come back in 15 minutes. And first of all, they don't want to do the math to figure out what that even means. And second of all, they didn't look at the clock at the time that I said to figure out how far away 10 minutes is. So I like to say those very specific times, which helps a lot. And then also with the breaking up of activities, it's really important that they're doing multiple different modes of activities. So whether they're listening to an audio clip of something, or they're reading something, watching a video, having a discussion, doing all of those things every day really makes it less monotonous for these kids. And one way that I have done that is through Edpuzzle. Now, Edpuzzle is a free online learning platform where you can search all of YouTube to find any video. And then you can insert multiple choice, open-ended questions, or even audio voiceovers into the YouTube video. So even with videos as short as 5 minutes, as you can see with this example right here, I inserted about 10 questions where it would pause the video, ask the students a check for understanding question, and then continue on. And I can assign that to my different classes. I can make due dates, and I can grade it right within Edpuzzle, which is really, really awesome. I can easily check to see if the kids even watched the whole video, because it will tell you if they stopped watching after 2 minutes and 30 seconds, or will tell you if they just clicked through the whole thing and clicked random answers. You can easily tell if they're actually understanding. So I use this a lot instead of just showing, like how I showed you guys that 3-minute video. Instead of doing that, I would have pulled them into Edpuzzle, made them watch the video through there so that it was broken up with those questions. My next piece of advice is really getting to know your audience. Of course, we get to know our students when we are in the classroom very well. We give them little surveys at the beginning of the year, and we read through them, or we put them in our file cabinet and pull them out when we feel like, what's going on? Like, why is this kid not connecting with me? But I feel like it's really important to get to know them even deeper in this virtual learning environment, because you don't really get to see those interactions with their other peers as much. So you need to know a little bit different types of questions about them. Like, where will they be completing the work? Is it in a noisy home? Are they responsible for taking care of 3 younger siblings between the times of 8 and 3? How comfortable are they with the technology that they've been given? And you also need to ask yourself, how can you facilitate excellent experiences through these differences? So how can you use the experience of one student to help another student? Excuse me. So a few resources that I have found are, oh my goodness, are dialogue journals, paper plate portraits, and something called a 2x10. And 2x10 is something that I actually learned about in student teaching. When I was student teaching at Mommy at Gateway Middle School, we had a speaker come in and talk about 2x10, and I have loved it ever since I went through that experience. This next slide is very, very wordy. However, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this would be like, if you want my presentation, you want to look through how you could do it, definitely do that. That's why I put all this information here. But basically, you just need to choose a student and talk to them for about 2 minutes per day, 10 school days in a row. And the point is to talk about anything but schoolwork. So ask them about their favorite color, TV shows, extracurricular activities. But the point is for you to actually listen more than you talk. So let the student guide the conversation. And then after 10 days, pick a new student. But continually go back to that original student and informally talk to them about their interests outside of the schoolwork. And if you took 10 minutes every single day to do this with just 5 students, you would make meaningful relationships with 95 students during the school year. And I know that's not all of them. And I feel like we all know as educators that we don't have time in our lives to do that with every single student. But if you maybe talk to your team and decided on a few students that you would really focus on, it would be amazing the relationships that you would build. My school this year is extremely big on SEL and social emotional learning, building relationship skills, teaching students how to communicate effectively with adults as well as their peers, and not just stand there awkwardly and look at you when they're trying to talk to an adult. And I really think this is a great opportunity to use to build rapport at the beginning of the year, or really any time during the school year, to continue those relationship building skills for the entire school year. I love 2 by 10. A lot of times I will let my kids go about 2 minutes early and just say like, hey, can you stay back? And I'll have a student stay back and we'll just talk about life. And especially with one of the first kids I did this with at the beginning of the school year, he still emails me like once or sometimes twice a day to tell me about the braces color that he's choosing. He found a new rapper that he really likes and asked me if I wanted to listen to him. All sorts of random emails that I get now. But to me, again, it's worth it. Like a few extra emails, because I don't have them stopping by my classroom after school anymore. That's impossible. So for them to shoot me that email and take time out of their day to say, Miss Weaver, right now I have red braces. Do you think I should do orange or blue next? Like, why do they even care if I care about that? I don't know, but I love it and I thrive on it. So I really enjoy doing this. And it just doesn't take too much time out of your day. The next one is learning or leveraging the learner's experience. So my question for you is, what experiences can your students bring to enhance your classroom? Ask students to share their experiences and stories and have them compare them to what you're actually talking about. The number of times in social studies where we're talking about, say, the Industrial Revolution, that's what we're talking about right now in social studies, and all of a sudden a kid's hand will go up and I'm like, yes, I haven't heard from this kid in weeks. This is going to be great. I'm so excited for him to share. And then it's like, did you know that my mom has been off of work for 2 weeks and she is standing over my shoulder? I'm just like, okay, thank you for that. But I've been trying to find ways to like use those stories and like shift their thinking and try to like say, okay, well, how could you bring that into what we're talking about today? Because they already have their mic on, they're already engaged. So how can you keep them there? Because something that you said made them want to speak up. Something that you said clicked in them to bring them to whatever conversation in their story they were sharing with you. And so how can you leverage that to actually engage in the topic that you're supposed to be talking about in class? And it's really important for me, as well as when we watched that video at the beginning with Trevor, to find hands-on ways for the students to engage even when you're not with them. So a few resources that I have used for that would be Canvas, of course, or canva.com, not Canvas, canva.com, discussion boards, and these 3D virtual tours around the world. So I use Canva. There's so many different ways to use Canva, but I use it for students to make, sorry, I'm trying to flip my slide, to make these concept maps. And remember again that these are 7th graders, so it's not going to be perfect, but these are some of my stellar students that were able to produce these concept maps. And so I had them connect every single thing that we had talked about in the French Revolution, and I told them that the majority of their arrows all needed to have connections. So there had to be a reason that they were drawing this arrow, connecting one idea to the next. And Canva is completely free for teachers and students, and they're really able to personalize a lot of their ideas. And I was blown away when I saw this concept map, as well as the one on the next slide that's also about the French Revolution. It was
Mackenzie,
amazing. Huh?
Mackenzie, there is a question.
Yeah.
Are you able to integrate all these external LTIs? I'm just going to say platforms because I'm not techie, into your middle school team's LMS?
So that's a very good question. My school uses Clever. I don't know. I had never heard of Clever before I came down here. So I don't know if you all have it, but I would assume you can. And if you don't have it, you could definitely create an account. But Clever, basically the students can log into one platform. So on my teams, I have like a link to Clever and they can click on it and it saves all of their login information for any external resources that we use. So through Clever, they log in with their school credentials and then they have access to Brain Pop. They have access to anything that the teachers put on there. So I put links to Flipgrid, to Canva, to anything that we're using in class. So that way it saves all of their usernames and passwords right there. So I don't get the constant like, Miss Weaver, I forgot my password. Miss Weaver, what's my username? It saves it all there for them. And it has been amazing. And I kind of thought it was weird at the beginning of the year because to me, like the setup of it looks like it's kind of elementary. Like the teachers' icons are like owls, like, and it's all very, to me, elementary. But I realized quickly how important it was for the students to have one place to go. And then from there, everywhere else is accessible. So I can link my Edpuzzle there, Flipgrid, anything that I'm using. Hopefully that answers that question. So here's another example of one of the concept maps that my students created on Canva. Again, you can see how different they are and how the student was able to incorporate a little bit more creativity into it with the different colors and the creative arrows that they drew. I think they had fun with this and they were able to really show the connections all the way across the French Revolution, which was really important to me. And I've also used this for like creating a business outline when we were talking about inventions. So they could like make a proposal and show me how they would present that. I've used it they have so many resources on Canva and it's all free and it makes their presentations or their assignments look so clean and organized and beautiful. I would assume, at least from my biased perspective, I would assume that you wouldn't look at this and think that a 12-year-old created it for either of these. I would assume that, I mean, for me, I would guess like 9th or 10th grade. I guess they would probably put more detail into it. However, I was amazed when I saw these. But it really showed me that they were engaging in what I was presenting for the information as well. Another thing that I really love is the virtual 3D tours. Obviously, we can't do field trips, and there's been a number of times that my students have asked, like, oh, I wish we could just go there. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I would love to be able to travel right now. But these virtual 3D tours, they are a little bit different than Google Earth in that you can literally look at any place in the world, basically. So this one is of Mount Rushmore, and it shows you like as if you were climbing up on the mountain. Very vivid detail of Mount Rushmore or Machu Picchu or the pyramids or anywhere. And you can actually click on, so if you look right underneath Teddy Roosevelt's face, there's a number 2, and all of their faces had little things that you could click on, and it will give you information about whatever you were looking at. So for this, it's Theodore Roosevelt, and it shows you the detail involved in carving his face and glasses. And it's really, really fun, cool. It's a great way for the students to see outside their 4 walls of your classroom or even the 4 walls of their bedroom, which is pretty cool. I had just a couple of days ago, I had shown them a video for Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Martin Luther King Jr. The day that he died, there was a presentation or speech given by Robert Kennedy in Indianapolis. And they had constructed a structure there of Robert Kennedy reaching out and then Martin Luther King Jr. reaching out as well, kind of like towards each other. And one of my students said, don't you think we could just go there? And I was like, don't you realize that Indianapolis is very far away? But I told him that I would try to look on this website to see if I could find something. And unfortunately, I have not had time this week. But I do want to go on there and see if they have that statue on there, because I think to see it 3D versus just in the video that I showed them, they would really love that because they really connected with what we were talking about that day. So 3D tours are really cool. And then I believe this is my last point. Yes, I believe this is my last point. And it's to ask a lot of questions. I know as teachers, a lot of times it's a lot of like, I'm going to figure out the answers for myself. I'm a perfectionist type of teacher. Like, I don't like to show weaknesses to other teachers, and I like to have all the answers. And I've realized that I need to be way more human to not only my colleagues, but even my students. And I was so focused on not letting my students see me crack that I was making mistakes left and right with like little things. And one time, I vividly remember this, but I had been telling my students how to copy and paste all day. And they all told me that they could do it, which is confusing to me. But by the end of the day, one of my students raised his hand and he was like, Miss Weaver, it's control, not whatever. I think I was saying like command because I have a Mac and they all have PCs. So maybe I had been saying option or something else like that. I was like, click this and then C and then this and then V. And they were like, Miss Weaver, it's control. You're supposed to be clicking control. And I was like, oh, that would explain why no one was like participating earlier for the entire school day. And that really like woke me up to realizing that in some of these circumstances, as we all know, like the kids are way more versatile in this information than we are, knowing how to work their computers and knowing how to get around our firewalls. And so it's very humbling sometimes when the students are like, oh, guess what? Like, I haven't been able to see your screen for 5 minutes and you're just rambling on and I can't get a word in. Or they'll just be like, you've been muted for a while. And so it's okay to be human and it's okay to say like, oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry. And at one point I realized that I had posted the incorrect test and I like wrote this thing and I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. That's my mistake. Like, how about we just do a study game today and we can take the test tomorrow? And one girl responded and said, Miss Weaver, it's okay. You're a human too. You can make mistakes. And I was like, you're right. I can make mistakes. It's okay. But I think it's really important to be a human being and ask questions when you have questions. It's also important for me to really check for understanding. And I know I touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but with the suspending of the standardized tests, it's been a little bit easier for me to check for understanding and not moving on until I'm confident that the students are actually ready. I have the ability to be a lot more flexible with my schedule and we have benchmarks at my district where like we need to be at a certain standard by a certain week. And that has been a lot more flexible this year and that's okay. And I find myself still with my checklist of by January 29th, I'm supposed to be done with this essay and we're starting it on Monday. So whether that happens or not, it's going to be okay. Like I don't have to get everything done right now. And I've had to really learn to be a lot more flexible. We're already so flexible as teachers, but even more so online so that we're not leaving huge chunks of kids behind. Of course, creating short newsletters or agendas with weekly updates is really important. I do this in the face-to-face classroom as well as in the virtual classroom. At first, I was just posting the agenda and saying like, here's this for you, look at it if you want. But I've realized that I actually need to pull it up at the beginning of every week and say, okay, here's day by day what we're doing. And if I don't do that, or I forget to do that, one of the students are like, have we gone through the agenda yet? And I'm like, no, we have not. Let's go and do that. It's been really, really great. And I've challenged the students to call me out on those types of things and like ask me for more clarification or more information, which again is humbling half the time, but also allows me to be more clear for them, which is very important. And of course, asking for help from colleagues and admin. As a first-year teacher and second-year teacher this year, I was terrified to ask my admin for help. But even yesterday is like the perfect example because I've been working on this industrialization DBQ with my students for a week and I had first period turn them in and I got 3 out of 35. And I felt like I hit a wall. I was like, I spent 4 hours on this. What is going on? And I called my admin and I was like, I'm on the verge of freaking out. Like, I don't know what else I can do. Why aren't they turning in their work? What can I do? Like, and she was like, I'm so glad you asked. Here's some resources for you. imagine if I would have just sat in my room freaking out for the whole day. Like, but the ability to reach out and ask for help and feel comfortable reaching out and asking for help has been something that I have really grown with this year. And I think is a valuable skill for all of us as educators to feel confident asking for help. It's kind of backwards, right? You don't feel so confident, but it's been really great for me. So I'm definitely always finding ways to communicate with parents and students, which has been really hard in this virtual world. But finally, creating a professional learning network and learning from other teachers. I created this Twitter for one of my master's classes where we were supposed to interact a few hours a week with different educators online. And I found that to be incredibly helpful. There's something on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. on Twitter called EdChat. It's just hashtag EdChat. And there's just constant teachers just saying, okay, I did this week. Okay, I am struggling with this. How can someone help me? And it's just like so many educators coming together in an informal way to just say like, I need help. And then there's a bunch of people that know exactly what to do and are pros at this and are like, here's what I have, take everything. Like we all want every teacher to be successful. So here's everything I have. And some things that I feel super confident on, I'm able to help other teachers with, and things that I feel like I need help with, there's always someone to answer those questions. So finding that professional learning network, even if it's just within your school, I think is really, really important. So I wanted to share with you like what my agenda looks like. It is the Bitmoji classroom that you've seen 700 times, just to say that. So I had it all decorated for the holidays like 2 weeks ago, but I decided that it is getting close to the end of January. So I put up these motivational posters on my wall. And then this is what I do every week. So I have Monday, what our activities are, any assignments, I always highlight in yellow. And if we were to have like a quiz or assessment or project, I highlight that in blue. And so this week was pretty boring, as you can see, in terms of actual assignments. We had a lot of engagement and interaction, but it just basically worked through each of the documents on the DBQ. But I would show this to my students on Mondays and then explain each day my expectations for them and ask them if they have any expectations of me as their teacher and what I can do to help them further that week. So with a few minutes left, I would love to answer any questions that anyone has. I also have this QR code that I would love if you all responded with. There's also a tiny URL up at the top if you are not able to scan my QR code. But I would love to know something that you learned from me. And if you have any questions or want this presentation emailed to you, you can put that in there as well. And I'll get back to you. But also if you have any questions here in the chat, I would love to answer those as well. So I'll leave this up for a minute if anyone wants to scan that, and so that I can learn from you what was actually effective in this presentation and what you thought was helpful. So yeah, I can stop sharing my screen now if everyone was able to scan that.
You have really high expectations of 7th graders.
I do, and I refuse to lower them for distance learning.
No, I'm impressed. I mean, those maps that they did, that's something 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Sometimes we can't even get college students to do something like that. That was just really impressive for 7th grade.
Or administrators.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The only comment I see is Olga shared that she's very open with her students about not being tech savvy. So they have been helpful to her with technology as an instructor.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think my students, I feel like they've taught me sometimes more than I've taught them this year. They're so, before Christmas, the student that was like rocking in his chair in that Flipgrid video, he told me that for Christmas, he didn't ask for any presents, but he is building a PC for himself. And I was like, so you're telling me you can't do your homework half the days, but you can build a PC? That's interesting. But he's so smart. And I'm like, you're 12. How are you doing this? And somehow he managed to share his screen as his background. So like, as he was clicking on his computer, his background was exactly what he was doing. So I didn't have to look on GoGuardian. And I was like, do you know how you did that? Can you share that with the class? That's amazing. Because I know how to blur my background, and that's about it. So I couldn't believe that he was able to do that. It was amazing. But then when you see him like interacting with other kids, it's just constant moving and like likes and ums and wells. And I'm just like, and yet you are going and doing all these amazing things. It's
Well, they're
crazy.
uninhibited, you know, at the middle childhood level. They're really just pushing buttons and trying things and not worrying about ruining anything. They just explore. And so
Absolutely.
that works to our benefit at times. And you know, from working with me, I'm asking you to learn from you. How did you do that? You know, like with Clever. And I asked the question about, you know, how you funneled all of those external tools into your LMS. And the reason is because one of the things I find is that I have to run down and find student work for evaluating, right? So not only is Clever something that helps move the students in one road, but it also gives you the portal to look through. And it is enterprise based, but you can connect through Google. So
Yeah. It's really, you can, because we have ours connected through Microsoft, and we don't have Google, but it would obviously connect through that as well. And it's really nice for students to be able to do that for sure through Clever. It's amazing what technology can do now.
we've come so far. You know, back in the day when we were using HTML to write web pages, right? That's not that long ago. In my development personally from 20 years ago, I was writing HTML code. So
That's
I
amazing.
never imagined in 2 decades time that we would come to this place, but I'm glad we have.
Allison, you can share that you were doing that at age 4, right?
No, I was 27.
That's amazing.
She's a prodigy. Hey, can you copy and paste that tiny URL into the chat room?
Yeah.
I think I put it up in the very beginning.
Olga, did you want the tiny URL of my presentation or the reflection?
What you were referring to on that slide? I can't
Oh,
remember
okay.
the reflection.
Yeah. Let me just check to make sure I have it right.
And I would love to get your slides so I can get those resources available.
Definitely, yeah.
Is that
I'm
also
jealous that you live in Charleston. It's
Well,
a beautiful city, been there many times.
It is beautiful. The education is very, very different than Northwest Ohio, however.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe
So the
we
one
could
that
get her
I
to
just-
do-
Sorry, what? Oh yeah,
The second one is the one that you can get the presentation. of.
yes.
Okay, perfect.
I was saying to Olga, maybe we can get her to do a face-to-face professional development for your school.
Yeah, you can come down here and visit the beach and give me some professional development.
No,
I like that idea.
Oh, you want me to come
And
there?
then we can invite Mackenzie back up north
I don't know about that.
to do face-to-face professional development.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming to my session. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that you all learned something or able to take something away from this and implement it in your classrooms.
Thanks, Mackenzie. That's fantastic. I also think I need to remind everyone that there's going to be a closing discussion, but I think you need to leave this room and go back to the program and click on the main room to get into that final Zooms
All right.
room. Embarrassingly, Mackenzie, this is embarrassing that I know this, but that whole program, Southern Charm, do you run into that down there, or is that big down there?
What do you mean?
Okay, never mind. You don't know. Now
She
I'm
says,
really embarrassed.
no, Brent. She says hello to everybody now. She has
No,
changed.
no. There's a program on Bravo that follows people
Oh.
around, and they're based out of Charleston.
No, I haven't heard of that. I thought you were talking about, I didn't know, I was kind of going off what she was saying. I didn't know if you were talking about Southern Charm and like.
I wouldn't have been embarrassed for that, Mackenzie. It's like a
I know.
reality program, but it's people based in Charleston.
Oh, okay. That's
I know what you mean, Brent. I've seen it too.
Oh, thank you. You share my embarrassment. Thanks, Olga.
I'll have to look into it. I've never heard of it before, but I feel like I should. The only thing I see around here very often is I have gone past Live PD being filmed a few times. If you've ever heard of that show, it's very
No.
interesting. It's like they follow the police around with cameras, like they have permission, of course, and they like record their interactions with people. And I think it's like, I don't even know if it's on MTV or something like that, but a few times down here that we've actually seen it, and I'm just like, that's Live PD, like they're on TV. That's crazy.
Yeah. What a beautiful city, though.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's a foodie
Architecture.
town too, isn't it?
It's a what?
Foodie town. Like,
Oh my gosh, yeah. I follow so many pages on Instagram. I have like a list like so long of all the different restaurants I need to try. We try to go to one like once a week, try all the different restaurants. There's so many.
Yeah, whenever I go down there, she tries to take me to a place we haven't been yet. So
Always.
I'm like, okay, where are we going now? Where are we going now?
can you tell it's around lunchtime and I didn't eat breakfast? I'm bringing up food.
Yeah, this is definitely a location that I'm always going to like cherish living here for sure. There's no place quite like it, that's for sure.
Now
That's
you
right.
can be one of those educators who just stays where you are and teaches all over globally.
That's so true. And I've been like, because my fiance is like potentially going to vet school in the Caribbean next year. And I'm like, how can I potentially continue teaching virtually while living in perhaps St. Kitts, which would be crazy. But I would love to be able to keep teaching either in South Carolina or somewhere else virtually so I can continue everything.
Well, and now there are so many more virtual schools. And I mean, I sent 4 of our BGSU graduates are teaching in with Brad Callender out in North Dakota, but living here in Toledo. And but they're teaching in North Dakota. And because they opened up that virtual school, and he goes, Joanna, do you have any graduates? And so we were just, it's like, here, you don't have to go anywhere, but you're teaching in North Dakota. But there's so many other opportunities now because of COVID.
And we're just learning of what, the technology is actually going to exponentially grow as a result of COVID. There is no doubt that the gaps are going to fill, the infrastructure is going to mature, the tools are going to get better, the mobility. Mackenzie, we were just beginning.
Yeah, I think the kids also, because I've had a lot of parents, and I'm sure as an admin, but you've probably heard this too, of like the parents saying, oh, my kid's going to be so far behind. But I think the kids are going to not be far behind at all. They're going to have so many new abilities in terms of like, I even tell my kids, like, you know how to write an email, and no one else your age knows how to write an email appropriately. Like, you know how to ask
their parents.
Huh?
Including their parents.
Yeah. I am constantly trying to tell the kids, as well as the parents in parent conferences, like they're learning skills that normal kids their age are not learning, like how to interact online, how to address an adult appropriately, like different things like that online are so different.
Find resources to build a computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, we're finding that there's so many kids who thrive yes, there are those who thrive face to face, but there are so many kids who are thriving in this online environment. Mackenzie, you were just telling me last week about
one of our students of the week that we went to go visit, the 6th grade teachers were like, you picked that student? Never. Like, he got suspended 3 times last year. Why would you ever pick him for student of the week? I had never even looked at his record. He is always participating, has straight A's, like never a behavior problem. It's insane to me how he's thriving when he's not distracted and trying to show off to his peers all the time. Like, he's not getting in fights. He's not doing any of those things because he physically cannot. But also he's thriving as a student. And it's like, I would have never picked that kid out in a crowd as someone that was going to get kicked out of school last year. And yet, like, he is just, he's amazing. Like, he's one of my absolute favorite students to interact with. It's really cool. But I feel like we might have to go back to the other meeting now.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Does that open at 45?
Yeah, 45.
I think so.
Okay. Mackenzie,
thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
See ya.
I just don't know what the allure of the Caribbean is, but I'll look it up.
It has a school that will accept him to vet school.
There you go.
I knew you got quiet, and Brent all of a sudden got really quiet. I'm like, he's looking for something.
Caribbean, what's that?
I know.
You got Perrysburg. Come on.
I know.
All right.
See you on the main.
Take care.